Los Angeles, Hollywood, Silicon Beach, home to entertainment, tech, marketing, advertising, public relations, music, and fashion. LA is the convergence of all things media, and there are more stories out there that you could possibly tell in a lifetime. It's all right in our backyard, and AMA Los Angeles is here to help you get the word out. Hello, and welcome to Get the Word Out. I'm your host, Philip Reventish, president of AMA Los Angeles. We want to thank our sponsor, Manhattan Advertising and Media Law, and of course we want to thank the World Center of Broadcast Media here in Hollywood. This show is about marketing, advertising, content creation, and tech. And in that world, the only constant is change. And like it says in the name of our show, we're here to get the word out about it. My guest today is Joel Metzger, the owner and writer, producer, director of Icebox Logic. It is a Los Angeles-based production company that, quote, creates handcrafted, artisanal audio and video productions in small batches. So, Joel, my first question to you is, while your productions are small batch artisanal, are they organic and farm to table, sir?
Yes, all our video productions are certified organic. No GMOs ever, or no hormones ever.
Excellent. Yeah, so it's a healthy show, is what you're saying.
Yes, and we're cheaper than Whole Foods.
Okay. So, Joel, you produce content for both video productions. You also produce podcasts. As a producer, what are the biggest differences between those two mediums when you're creating content for video versus audio?
The biggest difference that springs to mind is just cost, frankly, because podcasting is just very simple. It's a fraction of the cost. So I can show up, as I do for the AMA podcast, with microphones like this at a client's office, tabletop, just me, backpack full of gear. I don't need to hire a crew. I don't need to get film permits. I don't have to worry about locations. All of those moving parts cost money. So the big difference is cost. And the other difference, I would say, the advantage to video is it's got that visual impact. So if you're scrolling through your Facebook feed and you just see that moving video, it just grabs your eye.
Right, sure,
of
course.
Podcast, that's one thing it can't do. It's just a different animal.
So it sounds to me like video production is harder than audio production. Would that be a correct assumption, sir?
Yeah. There's just more moving parts, and there's more things that can go wrong because there's more moving parts.
Right, exactly, because you're dealing with video, you're dealing with audio, and you're dealing with anything that's on location that can go wrong.
Yeah, especially if you're on location, because it could rain, planes fly overhead if you're getting audio, anything.
At the worst possible time,
At the worst possible time. Yes.
So, Marvin, I know we have Joel's reel. Can we run part of that reel? Joel, tell me a little bit about how recent this reel is, and tell me a little bit about your thought process behind it.
It's really recent, just in this last month. I'm really proud of it. I guess if you take 5 years of content and crush it down into 2 minutes, it comes out okay, right? But I had a real. I purposely wanted to make it sort of friendly and happy and upbeat and seem even a little homemade, like the transitions are these hand-animated transitions, because I figured the clients are pretty big, and so why am I trying to puff up my company? Let them be impressive with those logos. I'll be impressive by proxy. So it was kind of counterpunctual. I wanted to do it in kind of a small scale way and let them kind of brag for me.
Right, and let the work speak for itself. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, excellent. So. I'd also like to talk a little bit about your work at The Grove. The Grove is a vibrant part of the Los Angeles business and social scene. Caruso affiliates, they really, truly transform the landscape of retail and what a mall represents, and really for the modern era, if you think about what they've done. So I know you've done work for them, so you can tell us a little bit about the work that you've produced for them, and the marketing or promotional reasons for why you were doing the work.
Yeah, they're one of my favorite clients. They're a great team to work with. They're just so professional and so creative. And our productions, we do large scale and we do very small. The large ones are things like the summer concert series that we're going to do in July. They do 4 concerts in July.
Okay.
That's 2 acts each, huge crowds, a lot of gear. We'll have 3 cameras shoot, and we have a live feed that goes up on the Jumbotrons, and so it's all just really live and exciting. The thing I really like doing with them, the thing they do really well is what you mentioned mentioned the experiential marketing. You know, they're just really clever with that. So a lot of times they'll have an experiential pop-up that they'll want me to shoot. For example, when they were promoting that last X-Files movie, they built this huge flying saucer and they buried it, you know, halfway in the ground in the middle of the grove, so it looked like a UFO crashed in the grove.
Right, I remember seeing that.
Yeah, and it was,
as a consumer, I remember seeing that painting. And as an X-Files fan, I'm like, okay, I like that.
Yeah, it made a huge impact. You know, they had guys in hazmat suits spraying it down and everything. So those are the fun things that I enjoy shooting, because they're being really creative in what they're presenting, and then I try to be creative into how do I turn something that is almost like a static display into a really cool video.
Now, I know you've also done some work for Hewlett-Packard, and Marvin, I know we've got some footage on that. It'd be great if we could roll it. So, tell me a little bit about your work with Hewlett-Packard. Obviously, a stellar brand, an important brand for our country. So, tell me a little bit about that work.
Yeah, I did 4 campaigns for them. 3 were in Las Vegas, and it was a really unusual production. I've never done anything before or since like this. They would go to these conventions, and to the conventioneers they would hand out these experiences, these free experiences. They'd be things like helicopter rides over the Grand Canyon, or dune buggies, or zip lines, or just these crazy adventures. And then we would rush out, very run and gun, you know, in the middle of the desert, put GoPros all over the dune buggy and shoot the hell out of the dune buggies. And that was exciting enough, but then what I had to do is I had to cut this thing into what was a fairly polished 30-second spot with music and sound effects and motion graphics that I had all loaded up on my laptop within about 3 hours, so that we were pumping out 3 or 4 of these a day, finished spots that we just shot.
Wow.
And it would go up on their Twitter feed. They had this huge mission control with about 20 people that were just tweeting and giving away things and sending up photos and having an ongoing conversation with the convention. And then every 3 or 4 hours, I'd finish a spot, and then that one would go up. So it was kind of like, I called it as close to live as possible. That was the format.
Somewhat live.
Yeah, somewhat live.
So I want to circle back to audio for just a second. So if a client is contemplating producing a podcast for marketing or promotional purposes, what are some of the things that both you as the producer and the client need to understand?
I think the first thing they need to understand is it's more work than a lot of the other formats. It's a lot more work than tweeting 140 characters or posting, or even doing like a blog, you know, because you have to find the guests, book the guests, interview them, edit, record, get it up on the way. So it's a lot of work.
So it's more than just a one-day process. Hey, let's do this now. Let's do a podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, again, if you had to give some tips to a company if they're thinking about doing that, what would you suggest to them?
Well, yeah, you'd keep in mind, you know, the amount of work that goes into it, and if you know, if they were asking me whether you know, should we do a podcast, should we not do a podcast, I think the thing they got to realize is there has to be an organic reason why they're doing a podcast, why they're putting out fresh content every week. Right. You know, even if they're a big company and they have the time and they have the money and they can hire a whole team to do it, if it's like Coke, like a huge company, why would Coke have a podcast? You're going to talk about Coke for a half hour every week. You know, there's no organic tie to the fresh content you're putting out that reflects on your brand. Okay. So you really got to. It's just not for everybody. It's got to be an organic fit to your company.
So let's talk about that just a little bit. Is there a standard length of time for a podcast? Or it seems to me, I mean, my own personal experience, you can find a podcast that's an hour long, you can find something that's 20 minutes. Yeah. What are you finding out there? What seems to work best?
There's no standard length. Okay. There's no standard length. I listen to podcasts that are about 8 minutes long. Then on the long side, you have someone like Tim Ferriss that is over an hour, sometimes 90 minutes, but it's great content and people love it. Okay. That's long. Right. The closest thing to a standard, or just a very common format, is a half hour, because a lot of these shows are repurposed radio shows. So they're going to be a half hour, and they're going to have commercials in the beginning, and a mid-roll, and a
exactly.
At the end.
So they're repurposing content and now calling it a podcast.
Yeah. A lot of them are radio shows. So that's the format you'll see most often, but it's not a standard.
Okay. Well, Joel, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
it, sir. It was
All right.
a pleasure. And thank you again for taking time to appear. Our thanks go out to our sponsor, Manhattan Advertising and Media Law, and of course, the World Center of Broadcast Media. Thank you very much for coming on, Joel.
Thanks.